Welcome back. Every time there is this countdown at the start of every live we do, I feel a little bit anxious. I don't know why, but I've got these inside feelings. Be like, I don't know.
No, come on.
Welcome back, Stefania.
Thank you, Michele. Glad to be today on the other side. And today we have an amazing speaker.
Yeah, it's really nice to see you here. This time you're gonna interview our speaker. You're gonna be the one leading the conversation. And today, I don't know. We did so many live streamings that I don't know. I think I've lost the count of them. I cannot say if they were 20, 30, 40. I don't know. Have you got the right number, or we can just skip it?
We can skip it. We can say that they are not enough.
Yeah, but they're never enough, and that's why we keep on inviting people, interesting people usually. Let's see if Dario today surprises us with an even more interesting speech. Last time it was really nice. The guest that we had talked a lot about how technology is evolving and enabling us in certain fields. I think today we're going to talk about work. It's usually a boring subject, but I think, and I'm sure that Dario is going to help us through and give us some solution. And on the other side, I think some nice inspirations.
For sure.
Well, given that, I think I'll let you do the introduction of Dario. I think I'll go away and leave you to talk, and I'll be back in around an hour.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michele. See you soon.
Thank you. See you.
So there we are. Good morning for you, Dario.
Yeah. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you guys are.
So we're really happy to have you today with us. So for who doesn't know me, my name is Stefania. I'm currently working in R&D innovation at Nestle, and I'm an alumni and the vice president of La Storia nel Futuro. I did a Silicon Valley study tour back in 2017, and I'm really happy to still be involved in these amazing opportunities. And today we are here with Dario. We are going to talk a lot. We have prepared an amazing interaction. So without further ado, I would like to let Dario introduce himself. So who is Dario?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the good words, by the way, also Michele. Now you set the expectations very high. So I hope now it's on me to deliver to the audience.
I'm sure you will.
Let me tell you that it's a great privilege to be here and having the opportunity to speak to this great audience. Now, who am I? I would say somebody very cross-functional. I would say I'm a generalist that is able to deal with a lot of different subjects. But my knowledge is not, and experience is not very vertical. It's more on a managerial side, if you want, and always across, in between the engineering world and the business strategy world. I've always been in the middle. I've tried many different sizes of companies, from large and multinational enterprises to small startups and what is in between. I've been doing some consultancy. Sometimes I drifted a little bit more on the engineering side, and sometimes more on the business development sales side. But I've always been constantly in the middle, very cross-functional. And I've always had my entrepreneurial fire inside, always exploring new ideas and having, deep product discussions. That's what fuels me. And that's why I would say I'm in product management. And currently, being in product management for more than a decade, I would say 15 years or so. And currently I'm at Cisco, working as a principal product manager for the WebEx strategic integrations. So every time WebEx needs to interact with an enterprise strategic tools like Salesforce, ServiceNow, or strategic content creation tools. There's a lot of visual collaboration tools that are being very successful lately. Mural, Miro. I'm there taking care of the strategy and those products. I have a very small team for now, and then also I'm working on a side project. Is a startup with a former Cisco colleague. Well, actually, a couple of Cisco colleagues, and we're having fun trying to solve some of the problems that emerged from working in a pandemic world.
Yes, and we are going also to talk a little bit about living and working during the pandemic. But before, I would like to ask you a question, Dario. So you said you're a generalist, you've been merging engineering and business strategy, and your current position is being also a product manager. So what's the role of a product manager, and how did you end up being a generalist doing this job? What's your day-to-day?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of questions in one. Let me try to tell you a story. Since I was a kid, I always, liked the strategy. Tactics are cool, but and get things done. But then the strategy, where you want to go, that always excited me, and kind of thinking about the future, and visualizing what the world would be in the future really excited me. In fact, my personal favorite Smurf, the Puffy in Italian, was the inventor, the one with the pencil on his ear. Now, there are a few, but at the same time, I really like putting the hands on the product and always wanted to create something, building stuff with Lego or something. So this was a natural consequence. And product management really captured these two aspects. You have to figure out the problem that you identify in a certain industry or target segment or a certain kind of users, and you have to creatively solve it by providing a product that solves a problem. And the problem must satisfy certain requirements. It must be a problem that is very common in your target segment. It needs to be urgent to be solved, and there must be willingness to pay to solve the problem. Otherwise, nobody's going to buy your solution. And so that is, in a nutshell, those are all challenges. And what is product management? Well, product management is making sure that you always satisfy, your solution always satisfies this three main pillars, the conditions. And then it's also dealing with the uncertainty that you have until you determine whether you're going to be able to meet these requirements. Now that's at a very high level. Then how does that translate in your day by day? Well, you're not alone in solving these problems. You have usually a large organization or a small organization working with you. And the product manager is the person that owns the vision, owns the why we're doing what we're doing and what we are going to build. And you have to constantly communicate it to the rest of the team, because you have to make sure that everybody shares the common goal and is aligned towards that, to reaching that particular result. And that is an art. It's a lot of soft skills. It's try to do your best to be likable, establishing trust with everyone, communicate, and sometimes convincing people that what we're doing is the right thing. And that's the only way you're not going to have people going sideways and derail the work. You really have to lead by influence. And that is a key skill, dealing with uncertainty, leading by influence, and then being able to capture a long-term vision and constantly communicate it and making sense for everybody involved in the organization. It is really exciting. It's also, you have to be a self-starter, sort of self-motivated person. Sometimes there's nobody going there and poking you and say, do this, do this, do that. And that's, it's up to you to proactively come up with, new ways, new ideas, new paths, and steer the strategy for the overall organization. It's exciting, it's hard, it's generalist.
So I like that you keep stressing on the word generalist, especially for, I don't know, the audience for us today, but I know also for myself, when I was studying or at the beginning of my career, I was like, oh man, I wish I had studied something more specific, because sometimes being a generalist can be a pain, let's say. Sometimes it's a gem in your case, and other times it's just, again, a pain. So how did you manage to navigate through your career being a generalist, and which were maybe the key points, maybe also in your previous experience, that allowed you to improve the soft skills that are so useful for you today?
Yeah, so for how did I get to be a generalist? For me, I had no choice but being a generalist. There was one day that my father came up with the Corriere della Sera, the Italian most famous newspaper, and there was this article that at University of Bologna, they were creating the first ever internet-oriented course, bachelor degree and then also master. It was called Scienze di Internet. It was half economics and half computer science. And what I did is to say, okay, let's do that. And I immediately jumped on that. And it was cross-functional from, as an academic course, was already cross-functional, right? So I came out of college, university, that I was neither fish nor meat, as we say in Italy, right? Né carne né pesce. And so I had to look for cross-functional work right off the bat. And I landed a job that was cross-functional at Eni, the biggest Italian company, which was knowledge management. It's really systems for business processes. So it's been very cross-functional from the very beginning, and I did not do a lot of. I didn't have to do a lot to get there. There were this new jobs coming out of the economy of information that were already cross-functional, and they needed cross-functional skills. So I was also lucky. Say I had great referrals from a friend who was already inside, and network is always fundamental. Anyways, and so it's really about cross-functional. What was the second part of the question, Stefania?
Like if you had any key moment in your previous experience, also in your experience now, that have helped you to improve the skills, the interpersonal skills that you were mentioning.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me. Well, I would say playing sports and not being a very diligent student during intermediate and high school helped a lot. I probably spent more time playing with my friends and on the street than studying math during my high school time, or playing basketball at a certain point for a few years of my life. And you can't see that, but I'm 6'9", 2'7". So I've been playing basketball, entry-level pro for a while, and they're really, winning together or losing together, and team dynamics, how it works, really enlightens you. It gives you great soft skills, how to resolve conflicts that may arise during games amongst different stakeholders and people you have there. It may be a coach fighting with some, another team's player, or it can be somebody in the locker room fighting in your own team. And, you have to figure out how to solve this hard situation. You have to develop leadership skills and learn how to take the lead and drive your team to win. These are all dynamics that seem, overinflated. Maybe everybody's talking about that, but I have to say that if I didn't have my sports experience that developed a lot of the understanding of teams dynamic, I wouldn't be as skilled as I am today, probably. So that has been a great, a way to develop my own personal skills.
Amazing. I really like when we use things outside work into work, and yeah, I also really like when people keep doing something outside work just to push themselves out of certain boundaries. But now let me jump to our next question, which is more related to the product that you're working with at Cisco, which is WebEx. And for who doesn't know what WebEx is an audio and video conferencing call app that got, I think, a really huge boost during the pandemic. So I would like to ask you, Dario, what has changed in your tool, like in WebEx during the pandemic? So how the pandemic has affected WebEx as a tool for you, but also maybe for Cisco in general?
Well, WebEx changed in several different ways. The first part of the story is it changed a lot in the back end that you guys don't see. Because you start the lockdown, people work from home, and suddenly you have a tremendous surge of usage. And so the teams had to do really pull off miracles to update the servers worldwide in different geographies, being compliant with various GDPR regulations and data sovereignty issues, etc., to keep up with the great demand. And Cisco serves enterprises. You don't hear you don't hear WebEx as often as Zoom because consumers don't use it much, but enterprises, very large ones, and governments, and they use WebEx because it's extremely secure, reliable, and it's enterprise oriented. In fact, the world leaders use WebEx to discuss and have video conferences. Now, so there was a surge in usage that was tremendous. So the team scrambled to update, to upgrade everything, all the infrastructure that we had, and crazily enough, didn't have any major outage of any sort. So the team did a phenomenal job. Then, if you think about the way the pandemic works, to a certain extent, the hybrid work and the remote work didn't impact WebEx much, because WebEx is already, the WebEx core capabilities much, because WebEx is already designed for that. If you want, at Cisco, when we got into a lockdown, probably most of the employees said, okay, it's another work from home day. okay, they already had everything. We have devices home. We have, WebEx video devices. Everything is. We already have the headsets. This is one of the Cisco headsets that we have built here, and we have designed it in San Jose here. Now, we already had everything. It wasn't a big change. We were already using WebEx Teams every day. We're already having virtual meetings. Now, what changed is the fact that a lot of the in-person interactions that you had once at the office ceases to exist. Now, there isn't the opportunity to get a coffee and meet somebody and have a chat, an impromptu chat. There's nobody walking to your desk, which is on the one hand is phenomenal. I had people coming to. I always try to be the nice guy, and people come to me continuously. So if I want to focus at the office, it's kind of impossible. Every 15 minutes, somebody comes and needs something. But if so from working from home, from that perspective, allows you to focus on and work on do some solo work. At the same time, though, you don't have this chat conversation that you usually have, and people don't call each other anymore. It seems that you're invading somebody else's privacy by making a phone call. So what people ended up doing is scheduling more meetings. If I need a one-to-one with the friend, need to catch up on something, we need to have a coffee talk, there's another one-on-one in your calendar. And calendars are like a minefield.
Yes,
very
yes,
crowded
they are.
minefields. You don't know where. It's a constant constraint, and people really started to feel that. And sometimes you're back to back. You don't even have the time to go and have a restroom break.
Yes.
Or lunch break, which is really impactful.
For the usual, sorry, I was in another meeting.
Sorry, I was in another meeting. Yeah, I ran over.
Exactly.
So there is a certain amount of solutions and products that started solving some of these issues in the last couple of years that came out, and we see some trends. For instance, there's a new way of managing teamwork. You have all these companies like Airtable, Notion, Asana, ClickUp, all these enhanced project management tools for orchestrating team collaboration. These ones became unicorns and are fast growing, and so there's definitely the opportunity to integrate with them and bringing some of the power of WebEx into those tools, and vice versa, bringing projects into the WebEx pane of glass. So reducing these context switches and having more integrations oriented to emerging ways of working remotely. Then there's also a wellness story. There's a lot of attention in wellness and how to better manage your schedule, your time every day, so that you are and you're not stressed. You reduce stress and work longer and live longer. Sorry, work less and live longer. And substantially, the biggest challenge for other companies, I would say, and not Cisco, is ensuring a level playing field. We have to make sure that a remote worker has the same opportunity and doesn't feel excluded when compared to an office worker. So you really need to make sure that if the organization shift to the hybrid work paradigm, which they are, and the hybrid work is here to stay, then you have to make sure that everyone feels included and engaged with the organization. And there's multiple advantages of doing that. You not only have a better retention and less turnover of your personnel, but also higher productivity, better satisfaction on the job, etc. So also employee engagement tools are getting involved with WebEx and kind of integrated.
Great. So this means that during the last 2 years, there has been a lot of push towards of those integration that are more people-centric, wellness, improving the like the day-to-day scheduling and calls, etc., etc. So let's jump back before COVID, like 2018, 2019. In your long-term strategy, did you have already something in mind to go and try to do some more implementation towards this direction, or was, let's say, 100% push due to the COVID situation?
It was not 100% push, but I would say it was a 60% push or more, because the pandemic accelerated the process.
Okay.
Think about before the pandemic, you had around you had around 3% of the worldwide workforce that was working remotely, and then with the pandemic, it jumped tenfold, and it became 37%.
Okay, so it was already in your roadmap.
It was already in the roadmap because the adoption of remote work has been constantly growing in the last 4 or 5 years at a regular pace, and the pandemic really make it skyrocket. But we don't we don't see it going back much. At least hybrid settings will work. And if you think about it, makes a ton of sense. Before the pandemic, companies were already exploring a mix between remote work and office work. Let's say instead of you have 100 people, these 100 people used to have one desk each, 100 workstations. Okay. Now they discovered that and Cisco has been on the leading edge of this, that if you combine remote work, so you allow this 100 people to work from home a few days a week, and then come to the office where they do not have an assigned seat, but they have a shared desk that they can check into. It's called hot desking. Then you are able to reduce those desks without affecting productivity by 40% around. So instead of 100 desks, you only need 60, which means you are cutting in real estate. You need less office space. And the second highest cost in an organization after people, salaries and compensation, wages for people, is real estate, is facility, square footage that you're paying. So it's a huge saving. And companies here in the Silicon Valley, they were already implementing that. Cisco was already, open space, and sometimes some offices didn't have assigned seat. People just went to the office and sat whatever was free and checked in on the desk. That kind of gets personalized to them. A phone becomes your phone. A video device. You check in, and it becomes your video device. So that paradigm is very appealing because you increase profitability of your business a lot, and this is that's why there are two reasons why I think that the hybrid work is here to stay. One is this real estate reason I just told you, and the second is people really had to change 2 years ago to start working from home. They changed deeply. They set up their office. They changed the layout of their home, and they carved out some office space. They invested time and effort. They bought devices. They felt profound discomfort at the beginning to adapt to all this change. And now that after 2 years, they're really used to be at home and work at home, and we're asking them to go back to the office. It's another change. and it's a change backwards. That's not going to happen. Hybrid work is here to stay, and the surveys that companies are carrying out with their employees clearly state that. There's a huge, usually very high percentage of response that 67% or so 2/3 of people that are interviewed, they don't want to go back to the office.
Yes, absolutely. But now I have a challenge for you, Dario, because some of us, maybe we are already experiencing the hybrid work, meaning that sometimes we may be in a meeting room with only 3 or 4 co-workers in the same room, and the other half connected, maybe with WebEx or with other tools. And sometimes there's the feel of that the people that are in the same room are getting maybe a little bit more out of the meeting, because they can also exchange something shoulder to shoulder, rather than with the people that are connecting online, that maybe are alone in their own room because they're working from home. So what's your view on these new opportunities of having conferencing call half and half?
Oh yeah, thank you for the question. This is a perfect example of leveling the playing field that I was telling you earlier. Right? We want to make sure that if there's a remote participant to a meeting, is completely engaged and doesn't feel cut off. And in order to do that, we did giant leaps forward in the past decades. We have ubiquitous, faster connectivity everywhere. We can have higher resolution, communications going on with better audio and video. We have a series of co-creation tools that are becoming very widespread. For instance, those digital whiteboards that Miro, Mural, to name a couple of recent integrations that we had at Cisco, 2 of our partners. And those new workflows allow people to collaborate on a mural in a digital whiteboard that is physically in a room, and also on a laptop by dragging and dropping post-its on that same board during a shared meeting. Now, the problem is still there, honestly, Stefania. A lot needs to be done to make sure that remote participants will feel completely engaged when there's the rest of the team locally in a meeting room. You lose a lot of the soft messages that come from reading somebody's micro expression, and you don't participate to the pre-meeting talk or the post-meeting corridor discussions. Well, we didn't get to the point yet with technologies, but maybe one day we will, who knows. The good news for those remote people is there's going to be more and more remote people. So there's going to be a cultural change and a perception of remote work that will be more accepted as the norm. Here in the Valley, remote workers are being hired, and they make the same amount of money as an office worker. It's just a lot of the jobs you see around are, I don't know, San Jose or remote as a location. But yeah, problem is still it's a challenge. It's a perception challenge that needs to be addressed.
And what about adding extra hardware that we are starting to see also somehow, like AR, VR headsets, or this kind of stuff?
Yes, VR will be absolutely interesting. Cisco has been announcing something recently. We have some initiatives where, um, some leading edge technology teams are experimenting a little bit of that. I've been participating to some trials internally, and it's really cool. It's still challenging to a certain extent, but um, it's going to get better and better, right? And more mainstream. And I would say we should thank companies like Facebook bringing the virtual reality concept to mass with Oculus um, and all the giving good reasons for consuming media in through that new paradigm. It will take, honestly, it's still quite far from being mainstream, but I can see how in the next probably 5 to 10 years we'll start seeing more and more productized versions of more mainstream versions of remote collaboration. Now, virtual augmented reality instead, if we talk about virtual reality and visors, yeah, we're in or holograms, like HoloLenses type of that will take a little more to be mainstream. Instead, what we are seeing today is collaborating on the resolution of problems that are technical for a production plant, for instance, or an oil rig, or we have what is called, and WebEx powers that, we have a solution that is called Expert on Demand, where there's an augmented reality visor. We have a partner that makes it, and through WebEx, we are able to offer on-screen help to a technician. So we can have a remote expert helping a technician solving an engine problem in a turbine, turbine problem somewhere in a plant remotely, and that's pretty powerful. Enabled by technologies like 5G, 5G on a plant, and then the WebEx infrastructure that allows that. It's called Expert on Demand for if you want to go and look at something like that, and that is a reality today. We have customers using it for maintenance, for instance.
And for example, especially thanks to the pandemic, did you find new pain points in which the solution can be used or readapted that weren't pain points for you to solve before?
Well, I miss a lot being doing those whiteboarding sessions with, and I'm not using whiteboarding on a desktop that much. I do, but not that much. So I'm usually the shortest path for me. My role is creating an Excel spreadsheet or a Word doc, but I would definitely, I think that the technology like that, with virtual reality, or not much augmented reality, but virtual reality will give me good reasons, new fuel to start going back to that kind of whiteboarding collaboration, and moving your pencil, moving your marker, in the space would be pretty cool. It will probably be something cool you want to try, and if it works well, then it can become a new habit. From that perspective, I think it would solve the problem of lack of occasions to whiteboard in person and co-create content as I was doing it before.
Great. And now you mentioned the habit. So I'm sure that as a product manager, you had some sort of habit before starting the pandemic, and some of them have changed during the past couple of years. So also how your role has changed and shaped, and also maybe comparing yourself with other colleagues in different companies or like worldwide. How do you feel your job has changed in the past couple of years?
Well, for me, it has been particularly shocking. I'm the super tall guy that everyone at the office knows, and all the bosses knew me by name, and I could go and get a coffee with and chit chat with the SVP, no problem. All of that was completely. I felt cut off. I completely felt cut off, and that was a big shock for me. Right? I was the type of guy that always went to the office. I didn't miss a day at the office unless I was, incapacitated in some sort. But I always went to the office. I completely disliked working from home. And I used to have my routine going very early, waking up at 5:30, going to the Cisco gym, work out, then start my daily meetings, spend the day there and come back home, at 7 p.m. or later. And I had my routine that completely changed. I had to find a new way of work out. I had to find a new way to communicate and keep my connections alive, the weak ties of your network that, these are the people you meet at the office and sometimes chit chat, give a smile. And then all of that was completely missing suddenly. I also changed a role a month before the pandemic,
Okay.
and I didn't have all the connections established at the office yet, and I had to do it online while everybody was in a change situation. It was pretty hard.
How did you manage that?
Patience and a lot of chatting, a lot of pinging people, hey, how are you doing? By using the internal messenger, and sometimes jumping on calls, and then finally I got, as we are human beings who adapt, and I adapted, and I wouldn't go back to the office now. And then I found my dimension of productivity here, and I have my new routines. It's really hard for me to go back to the office.
So then, what can be a suggestion of people that are changing roles or that started a new job in a fully remote environment?
Well, take the time to break the ice with everyone. Do a classic stakeholder management approach. You want to be able to approach every single person is going to be involved in your role, and have some one-to-one time, offer help, show your vulnerability, because that's the only way people will feel you're genuine and can trust you. And it's going to catalyze the creation of trust. The trust is fundamental in teamwork, and you don't have people will not see you at the office every day or every moment. They will not see what you're doing while you're not on a call. It's going to be harder for them to perceive your integrity or your work ethics, etc. So try to be as integer as possible when you're interacting, and offer always help. Go the extra mile to help other people. so that you're going to develop reciprocity, and they're going to remember you as a good guy and involve you whenever they need to, whenever there's something cool going on.
Absolutely. And then does it, so when you were saying stakeholder mapping, and that's something really, really important, not only as a networking side, but also as a company side. But sometimes people can feel overwhelmed about stakeholder mapping, especially when you enter in a big company. How would you let's say focus the effort on the right stakeholders? Because then it takes patience, it takes time, and time is sometimes time consuming, and it can feel draining to reach out to a lot of people without knowing, am I doing it right or am I missing something?
Yeah. So if you're lucky, you are in a company that has messaging, a sort of messaging solution, and most of the companies today do. So make sure you are in the right channels with the right stakeholders for your project, and be likable in this channel, be helpful, share relevant things, give updates to people, give first, and then you'll create a natural obligation in those people to give you back, and when you need something. It's very simple. The reciprocity is very powerful, and so make sure you do it in an efficient way. If there's a project channel or team chat with everybody inside, one message will get the attention of the entire stakeholder group. Same thing may apply then to your one-on-ones every once in a while. It's important to have a chat. You see somebody online, why don't you send them a message and say, hey, how are you doing? It's been a while, we haven't talked. And then, hey, okay, you need anything? No, just wanted to check in. All good? Yeah, sure. And then, okay, this guy is approaching me, doesn't want anything from me. Just genuinely pinging me because there's sympathy, there's a rapport between us. Those are very powerful ways to show that. Now, reach out to people, even though you may think, well, maybe we're bothering that person, but not. No, think about being them. You're there. Use chat, use messaging. It's very efficient. It doesn't cost much. Honestly, for a company that doesn't have chat or internal social media capabilities, if you want, it's going to be a bit harder. Probably you want to make some impromptu phone calls to the key strategic people every once in a while and say, hey, what's going on? Chances are they're busy. We have very busy calendars these days.
Yes, indeed. And so I really like that we had a dive deep into more interpersonal skills and how to move inside the corporation in a hybrid remote working. But now I want to do a step back and ask you a question that I like to ask to everyone, which is what you don't like about your job.
Well, I have an answer, definitely. The coordination cost, right? The larger the company, the more people involved you see, in your project, and these people require constant coordination. If they're not aligned, then people will go sideways and will derail or slow you down. So the majority of the time you spend in a large corporation is in creating consensus and sharing updates. Sometimes these updates have to be in written form. They have to be an Excel spreadsheet that captures the latest snapshot of what's going on, or it can be a PowerPoint presentation that is good for 3 days and then needs to be changed. So the bosses, especially going up in the hierarchy, require information. And every time that there's an information request or an update request, then it cascades down to you, and you have to scramble to find the latest updates and put something together. That is unfortunately, this is unfortunately something that I don't enjoy. I feel that my time would be better used, talking to customers or working on the products or creating consensus on the direction we're going, not kind of capturing the current status in the report. And because there's an important meeting of an SVP in 3 days and they need to know. Right. So this is something that I don't enjoy. But
Well,
I understand it's vital, right? The SVP with your information is going to open a door or create a new agreement with some partners, or is going to do something that will bring wealth and new resources to your project, for instance.
great. And so a lot of feedback and a lot of inputs that usually comes from higher peers, because as you were saying, are the ones that can open doors. But have you ever been challenged with your vision by someone inside your team?
Yeah, always. Yeah, it's very common. The way you handle this objection is always thinking about one aspect of product management, which comes with wisdom. And if you want, is a little bit an extreme position, but it's always helpful. Although the product management's opinion may be interesting, it usually doesn't count. Because what really counts is what the customer needs and what problems you're trying to solve, and what feedback and objective insights you have collected, either qualitative or quantitative, you have been collecting from your customer base. So if you really want to be a strong product manager that people don't challenge much, go and be an outbound product manager and exploit any possible opportunity to talk to a customer, to validate, capture knowledge of the problems you have to solve, capture details, get feedback on your product concepts, capture that feedback. And when somebody is challenging you, then show them the story, show them the why. Hey, we have interviewed this and this and this customer. They gave us these insights, and we figured that there are market trends that really corroborate these insights. And we think that this is a great solution. What you're suggesting would not be viable for this customer because of this, and that. This is the workflows that they have. They are following. This is what they need. And usually when you represent the customer voice strongly, and you position yourself as a subject matter expert of what the customer base needs and wants, then everything else is going to fall into place automatically. The next engineering leader that will come to you will hear your story and will know that this guy always talks to the customer, so he knows. When he tells me that a customer uses this workflow for handling things, I believe him.
So yes, challenge is always good. You should prove back why are you doing things in a certain way, but always customer centric.
Yes, yes. Be customer oriented always. It doesn't matter if you came up with a solution, a what to a certain problem. Why we need to solve a problem. What we can solve it this way. Now, the what is arguable. You may have a better way. We may have a better product, but the problem and the details of the problem and the customer habits and the customer needs, the workflows, the reason, the goals, the reason why they do things as they are doing it. Those are pretty much, they may evolve, but in a certain moment, they are cast in stone, if you want. At a certain point in time, they're cast in stone. They need to be, and you represent them. If you represent them unbiased and you're open to hear somebody else's objection, and maybe there's a lot of people in your project, they have great ideas. You take those ideas and you incorporate them in the concept, if it makes sense. Absolutely. But if it doesn't, your argument is, well, our customers do things this way and do things this way because ABC. Now, if you're proposing me this clashes with ABC.
So customer can influence your roadmap as much as you.
Yeah, at the same time, there's always the usual Henry Ford, the Henry Ford metaphor. Right? If he asked their customers what they needed, they say faster horses, right? You need to know the customers' workflows, goals, the way they work, what they're trying to achieve. And then it's up to the team to creatively find a solution to those problems. What you can't come up with is the problems. The problem must be either explicit and they know it's urgent to be solved, etc., or you're clearly identified a new way of working that is so much better than before, tenfold, that it may trigger change. So do something that, and then in that case, it will figure out, okay, so we have a problem that I wasn't aware we had, but it needs to be really a good incentive to change for that type of problem. Usually, there's something urgent and common in an industry you're targeting with your solutions, but those you can't come up with them. You can come up with the way you solve them, multiple ways, and think out of the box, etc. But no.
So yeah, it's a good challenge, and it's also a matter of trust, of who you're going to solve for, and the way in which your team is going to elaborate the problem of your customer.
Right. It's the way, given a certain problem, what is the best way to solve it? And a way that works, that will be adopted, that is acceptable, that reduces friction, that is easily sellable. It's through the current channel, or do we need to establish new channels? And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Is it supportable? Is it economic? Feasible, viable? Feasibility, viability, and so there's a multitude of factors you need to take into account when you're creating a product concept.
Absolutely. And I saw Michele jumping in the call and then leaving. There we are. I saw you.
I activated my camera as always. In the digital world nowadays, we've got these troubles of jumping in and out of meetings. Well, yeah, I was jumping in to thank you, Dario, for your nice speech and for being here today with us. You've been inspiring, and that's the title of the whole format. So I thank you for being here. Can I ask you just one thing, one quick thing?
Please.
Do you think that is it better a world with just digital smart working, as we call it in Italy, or is it better just in-person working?
Well, in the ideal world, you will have an in-person working with teleportation. Okay, we need to jump on a call. We will all enter our portable teleportation cabin and we meet somewhere instantly. Okay, that would be the ideal world. Now, if I had to pick between in-person and hybrid, and fully remote, there are pros and cons in both. And there are and it really fits, depends on the industry. Some industries are much better for in person. Think about a consultancy, production, and some industries like tech, they're perfectly fine being fully remote. So honestly, I struggle to pick my favorite.
Yeah,
Hybrid.
I asked you. I asked you an impossible question to answer.
We are too biased right now to choose.
Now,
Yeah.
I asked you an impossible question to answer to in purpose. That's because I think we're nice, as you said, there are pros and cons of every side. I think the nice way to go, the better way to go, is to find the right balance between digital and smart working and physical working. There are certain things that can be 100% digitalized, and companies like Cisco and companies where you work to and people like you will help us doing that in real life, not just imagining this solution, but putting this solution in reality. At the same time, there are some relationships, some things that are impossible to translate. And I think the best way to go for any company and any team that's working on a certain specific thing is to have the right balance between physical and technological solutions in order to gain the most from each one of them and do the best.
That sounds wise.
Well, sorry for jumping in with such a horrible question to answer.
No, it's good. But I can tell you, for the societies, hybrid is the way to go. For me personally, in this particular moment, I find it very helpful working from home. I find it better. At the beginning of the pandemic, no, it's a matter of personal preferences and fit as well. Now I wouldn't go back to the office. I don't do those hour of nasty traffic here in the Bay Area every day, and I don't have to spend a ton of time, grooming myself every day to get to the office. I can go get my coffee here. I have lunch at home. I eat better. I spend less money for lunch, and there's a lot of pros. Now, if I had to tell you today, my favorite way of working in my current position is remote. If you have to close a deal though, and it's better going and meeting a person live somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dario, thank you for being here, for this hour that you dedicated to us, and thank you for the community following you.
Thank you, Dario.
Thank you, everyone. I hope it wasn't too boring.
No, we got a lot of insights, and thank you for making us seeing a little bit what Cisco and WebEx are doing on their B2B side, but also your personal side of product management and being a generalist in this world.
Thank you, and
thank you very much.
Hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Likewise.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.